Alrighty, hello everybody. My name is James Burke, and my project in regards to this EALCE 301 Project 1 is gonna be about the Wuhan dialect. And so, with that, if I can find out how to present here. Okay, great. We'll be just, I guess, diving right in. So yeah, about the Wuhan dialect. We're doing a little talk here and just a overview of the dialect. And so to start, so the Wuhan dialect is a category, a dialect of Mandarin. This is the map we've been referring to the entire time, a lot of time in our class period as we've gone out throughout the weeks. And obviously, Mandarin, as we all know, is the most spoken form of the Chinese language. And Wuhan dialect is a part of Southwestern Mandarin. So it is specifically a dialect of Southwestern Mandarin. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but Southwestern Mandarin can be found in this purple region on the right, and then we see Wuhan on the map here. Um, so with that, I will be going to the next slide. So Wuhan dialect and its relations overall. So Wuhan is a big city in southwestern central China. It is a city that has a lot of uh, modern like architecture and whatnot, and it is a city with a lot of Mandarin speakers as a result. Um, the I have written here that the diglossic situation in regards to Wuhan Hua or the Wuhan dialect is more common as a low variety, so it is not the most prevalent of dialects. It isn't something that you're going to find everywhere present among Wuhan. It can just mainly be littered with people speaking the just standard variation of Mandarin, but it is more common as a low variety, which we will be getting into later within the presentation. Um, yeah, so overall, it's not the most outspoken uh, dialect, isn't something, and by that I just mean that it's not the most common, and it's not a language. But by that, I don't also mean that um, it is super exceptional and what has changed. It isn't something that has mutual comprehensibility and it also isn't anything super drastic, but still has its own changes. So some dialect specific linguistic features. I wrote a couple of them here, but we can talk about more as well. So the first thing I have here is that with Wuhan dialect, it lacks retroflex initials. So the zhang and the ch, like the ch and the zh, these things are in standard, or one could say traditional uh, Wuhan dialect. They are omitted. Um, so like if something is like sha written as sha, it can come out as sa. Sometimes these can be present though when you talk about the modern interpretation of the dialect, but traditionally and in older times, these were admitted. And this theme of stuff changing over time is continued when you talk about my second point here, saying that this fifth tone, the checked tone, has also disappeared over time. We're constantly learning that two of the biggest factors regarding language form, language shape, and the change of different languages that were once the same or more similar in the past are the big factors are time and geography. And here's just a good example of time. So that checked tone has disappeared, and now they are a four tone, or it is a four tone language, excuse me. Um, so, and the third example here is that the dental initials become more rounded. And so something like yuan just can end with an. There's like more, and that way it's more like simple. I guess it's like the omission, I should say, of the U. There are other things I can talk about. One of them I didn't mention here, but I'd like to point out is that in the nasal category, the and those exist, but for the mid and low vowels, the um the of the little funky shaped N, if you can picture it, that we've been learning about in class, that is always present in the mid and low vowels. Is very voiced and clear, so that's something that is present in the Wuhan dialect. Um, Going into our next slide, this is where we talk about my interviewee. So my interviewee is a 21-year-old female. She goes to IU and she is from Wuhan. Um, she lived there and was born there her entire life, but she came to IU for college. Um, she went to an international high school, but it was in China, and overall the language spoken was Mandarin, so it wasn't something that affected her, like, as I should say, like, she wasn't different than a typical person, student, kid growing up in Wuhan. She got very similar education, it was just slightly different. And this is excuse me, relevant, sorry, because of the fact that sometimes with diglossic situations, high and low varieties, there might be a high variety in school, but uh, it was also the case in normal public schools. She's fluent in Mandarin and this Wuhan dialect, and I felt it was important to note that one of her parents is from Wuhan, and one of them is not natively from Wuhan, even though they live there. So, a brief story is that when speaking in the household, her mother will switch between using Wuhan dialect and speaking it to her sometimes, but most of the time, standard Mandarin is present because of the fact that her husband is at the home. So, since the husband does not uh, understand, well, it's mutually comprehensible, but since he does not speak fluently the the Wuhan dialect, Mandarin is just more commonly used by her mom and her within the household. And so I'm going to talk about now about the linguistic findings from the interview. So to start, we've talked about high versus low varieties, but the dialect in relation to Mandarin is not commonly used, and it isn't something that is beneficial in most like areas. There's no real reason to use it that commonly. It's just something that she described as you can do for fun if someone you see someone, but most of the times you'll be initiating conversation with strangers or friends in Mandarin. Between friends, she said, it was kind of almost like a whatever they felt. Like some people don't speak Wuhan dialect, but if they know they do, maybe they'll speak it, but maybe not. They might just speak standard Mandarin. Um, an interesting tidbit she told me was that in markets and in stores slash restaurants, it can be beneficial to talk to them to maybe get like some sort of edge or just feel more connected with the I guess like the city or the locals. And this was interesting to the guest speaker that we had. It was similar to the guest speaker we had when referring to the Gan dialect. So I thought that was interesting. Um, their experience with accents, she said it was not anything that she felt was of note. She said that social stigma was not something that she picked upon or like picked up upon while being in Wuhan. She didn't. This might be like something common or at least talked about regarding social stigma with accents, but there didn't seem to be any uh, like bumping into each other or anything, any sort of collisions. Um, she said there are some advantages to speaking Wuhan dialect, like with the shops and stores and whatnot, but there's no obvious disadvantages if you're just speaking standard Mandarin. Over the years, she was told at some point that yes, there were the five tones, and but in her lifetime, there hasn't been anything notable that um, the the language has been changing really at all. And overall, the Wuhan dialect is something that she is happy to speak, but it isn't something that she totally needs per se, and it definitely isn't something that is super like excuse me, isn't super necessary to like live or have like a rich and fulfilling time in Wuhan. Um, and so with that, that'll conclude my presentation. Thank you very much.